Okay. Let's do a quick round of intros again, unless other folks have already done so. Hoyle, he, him, his, ED of JTA. Day 2, VJTF. Miss y'all, wish we were in person. But yeah, day 2, let's get it done. Pass it to you, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. Ben Duncan. I'm a Senior Director at Kearns and West, he, him pronouns, and I represent and serve as a liaison to the Oregon Commission on Black Affairs. I'll pass it to Bob.
Good morning, day 2. Bob Collin, Vice Chair, retired professor and still writing. It's another good day. I'll pass it to Quinn.
Good morning. My name is Quinn Reed. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Oregon Policy Director for the Center for Biological Diversity, and I'll pass it to Hui.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Hui Ong, Executive Director of Opal Environmental Justice Oregon, he, him, and Valentin.
Yeah, good morning. Valentin Sanchez with the Oregon Law Center, Center's Farmworker Program, pronouns he, him, and good to see you all. And I'll hand it over to Amira.
Good morning, everyone. Amira Streeter with the Governor's Office, Natural Resource Policy Advisor, she, her pronouns, and I'll pass it back to the chair.
Sweet. So wanted to see real quick if we've got like emerging issues, some public comment, a break, talk a little about business, EJTF business, engaging with advocacy commissions, other commissions, and then we'll close out. But I know we have attendees here, and I just wanted to check if there are other folks from agencies that didn't get to go yesterday. If so, you'll raise your hand. I think everyone went yesterday. I don't see any raised hands, but great. Looks like we got everything done. So with that, I'll just open it up task force members. I know we heard a lot yesterday from agencies and we didn't really get a chance to do closing comments and whatnot. So I'll turn it over to y'all and see if you have any reflections about yesterday's agency updates.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the only thing I would say is that, you know, it was great to see a lot of work being done by some of the natural resource agencies that was included in, for those that have submitted the report. So I had, you know, fun looking through, you know, some of those. I didn't get to all of them. And it's always, you know, great. And I really appreciate Michael Wood and Oregon OSHA for, you know, always attending these meetings and giving us updates as to what's happening, you know, with their work. And, you know, the one thing I mentioned yesterday was regarding workers that have to work inside those greenhouses. And it was great to hear that, you know, that Michael Wood recognizes there's some deficiencies in the permanent rules, and hopefully that will be addressed in the permanent rules.
Go ahead, Bob.
I thought, and Joel, Joel, and Ben, others have been around for a while, have seen a drastic increase in the quality of these reports. You know, we have 10 years of agencies working together on EJ. And these reports really show it. One thing that was a big difference this year was the rise of public health. I was watching the funding flows to the various agencies as they reported their many new positions. Almost all are very helpful for EJ on that. And I think that's a wonderful victory on that. But having public health within natural resource agencies is an unusual posture. It's our posture and always has been, but it wasn't really till this year with COVID and climate impacts, and we've been there all along that, and I'm a public health person with this, is that we actually had them being able to fund CBOs, 140 of them in a time of emergency. None of the other natural resource agencies did that. Part of the reason for EJTF is so agencies can learn from each other. Natural resource agencies can learn from OHA. And I think this is a big jump forward. So I just wanted to share that observation.
Yeah, I missed a lot of the report outs. But you know, as you were talking, Bob, I was thinking about, you know, that infrastructure that's been developed, or those investments, particularly from CARES funding. And you know, it might be a future conversation just around, you know, we've built incredible capacity, right? I serve on a nonprofit board that's doing a lot of contact tracing and built a whole infrastructure, hiring people from community, building up skills, right? We've built this public health capacity that I don't know what happens into the future. Now, of course, the future is being expanded in terms of variants and COVID still kind of ravaging communities. But it'll be interesting to hear from OHA and others around how either that investments can be sustained, or what do we do with all these folks we've activated and trained and invested in, who have deep relationships with communities, who are serving in ways that could be incredibly beneficial to EJ and incredibly beneficial to state agencies who, you know, are already required and will be required to do meaningful involvement. And I think we have positioned a lot of folks in our communities through the pandemic to be able to serve in other capacities. And I worry that we're going to lose this entire infrastructure that we've built up with folks that have been trained and skilled up, and trying to think about what does that look like a year from now or 2 years from now in the capacity that we've had to build through the pandemic.
I'm going to add one last point that might have missed a lot of people. OHA is taking on land use. All right. That is very unusual. Western European countries, Germany, they sort of do that. We have never done that. And that directly challenges some of the other agencies, very powerful agencies on land use jurisdiction. So I am very intrigued by this. Land use brings in private property, very strong stakeholders, not your usual ones. And the fact that a public health agency can help control the space, the environment, the land, air, and water as a public health function is a change conceptually necessary for climate change adaptation. And it was just toward the end, and I haven't seen it written up yet, but it is huge if this evolves this way. I would watch that at the grassroots for that change in how your communities get involved with the space around them. That's all.
Other folks? Yeah, I'm really excited about the work that OHA is engaging in. I think this pandemic just like really blew lid off everything, and they have responded to and they've risen to the occasion in a way that I think a lot of agencies across the country haven't had the opportunity to do. When I heard about the first time I heard about real D data, which is like I think it's race, ethnicity, accessibility, and language, right? And then this, and then disability, and that's how they were filtering how to test folks and give vaccines. I was like, wow, okay, they're doing some really cool stuff over at OHA. But every time I hear their updates, I'm just blown away by some of the work that they're doing, and I wish that our EJ partners and us as well, that we had more engagement with some of the work that OHA is up to, and that we could really lift up that work. It's also really exciting that they've gotten a lot of funding, and we've also gotten a lot of funding in general. Right, this ARPA funding has given us an opportunity here in Oregon, not just in EJ, but a lot of other things, to make some really on the ground tactical changes to the conditions in which our communities live in. We saw it happen during the session, and there's a lot of other things that happened as well. So yeah, I'm excited for the future. I mean, we still have a lot of things we need to do, and it feels like we're about to go into the dark ages again, right? The rise and how quickly Delta variant is ripping through our communities. And so, while we're trying to organize and trying to work on these EJ issues, like the fact of the matter still remains that these cumulative impacts, right, that we've been talking about for a long time that affect our communities, is just further compounded by this really nasty respiratory infection that already has killed a lot of our people, but is continuing to do so. So we have a lot of work to do, a lot of things we need to worry about, but there's also this other looming thing that's continuing to be with us, and it'll be with us for a while. So maybe we should switch to emerging issues. One of the things I wanted to just quickly bring up was a reminder to folks about House Bill 5000, and I think it's 5006. So this was the bill that was appropriating money to the emergency board. And so they have like hundreds of sections. One section in particular that I wanted to bring y'all's attention to, a number of EJ orgs got together last session and had a conversation about, these $4 billion that came to Oregon, we could wave a magic wand and do something with them. What would we do? And, after a series of conversations, sort of boiled down to, this a need to really respond to these natural disasters, whether it be heat or fire or cold, in a really specific way, not just for prevention, but also for mitigation, and afterwards, how do we rebuild? So the emergency board did, out of the general fund, allocate $150 million for state natural disaster prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery activities, which is pretty broad, but that's a really big chunk of money. And so at some point, whether it be at our next meeting or, in our in-between meetings, it would be good to have a conversation or perhaps a little mini session and with Amir's help and other folks in the governor's office, take a look through the emergency board appropriations and funding and seeing where they have EJ cross sections. And then, perhaps come up with some recommendations or other things so that when the emergency board does convene again, they have some guidance from us about how to use these funds, because it is a lot of money. The emergency board does have a lot of money. And there is a timeline associated with this. I know that these funds have to be spent by December 1st of 2022. And that goes for, a lot of these emergency board funds, which all came from the government. So they have to be at least appropriated by the first, not necessarily the cash check, but they have to be appropriated. And there's, that's like around a year and a few months away. So it's really great that it passed. Those funds are available as of July 1st of 2022. But that's that section I just read to y'all's. That's just section 167 of, I think it's 196 sections. Not all of them apply to EJ. Some of them go to, really important things like the new commission, some new commissions, some other stuff regarding housing, some forestry stuff, but there is a lot of EJ intersections. So I'd love to chat with some of that with you all, hopefully for that December 1st date. Any thoughts on that or other things? Yeah, go ahead, Quinn.
Thank you, Chair Boa. I just wanted to follow up briefly. We heard from multiple agencies yesterday who have some vacancies coming up on their boards and commissions. And in some of the work that I do, I work on commission appointments for agencies like ODFW, and there are so many challenges trying to find folks to fill those roles. There are huge time commitments. It can be controversial. Getting through the appointment process can be tough. So I bring that up just because I would, love to hear more from the governor's office about how things are changing. I know that there were a few recruitment events, which was really, really great earlier this year. And I'm wondering if we could hear more, perhaps a report at some other time about what the results were, if what attendance looked like, if that resulted in more applications. But at some point I would like to, have a better understanding of what the barriers are, beyond just the agency that I work with the most in the course of my work. What are some challenges that other agencies find in filling these positions across the natural resources spectrum?
I'm gonna kick us off real quick, Amira. I had a conversation yesterday after our meeting with Chiun Kim, which is a new appointments person in the governor's office. And so we were on the phone for about half an hour, and they made it very clear to me that the governor's has a really big priority and focus on trying to get more community members that have typically not been involved in boards and commissions on boards and commissions. And so she has been reaching out to folks, community members, and folks in the nonprofit industrial complex, and just other longtime leaders to try and build up a list of folks that could potentially apply to boards and commissions. The other thing she shared with me in our short conversation was that there are some boards and commissions that the governor's office want to take in a different direction. or in a direction they haven't in quite some time. One of the agencies she mentioned that I was very, very excited to hear about go in a different direction was the disability, disability commission, the Oregon Disability Commission, which has been around for quite some time, but up until this point has been very focused on ADA access, right? Which is very important. And of course, surfaced from, protests and a lot of organizing in the 70s and 60s. However, the disability justice movement now is a lot browner and blacker, and is pushing for much more than just ADA access and compliance. So they're looking for some new members, and that was really exciting to hear. Of course, the other commissions, the advocacy commissions, but then there's the Board of Forestry, as you just mentioned, Quinn. And there's a ton of boards and commissions that need appointments. There's going to be a September Senate confirmation, and then there's another one in November, sounds like. So there's one in September, November, and then February. I think we missed the deadline for September. I think that was mid-July, but there is still time to apply and potentially be considered for the November and February dates. So yeah, it was a good conversation. She and Kim was very clear with me that they really want to make these boards and commissions reflect more of Oregon, especially given that we just have new U.S. Census data. And, I've looked a little bit through it, but from what I've seen, Oregon is definitely browner and blacker than it used to be. So that brings, I think, a lot of new implications and consequences to the work that these advocacy commissions do, these boards and commissions do. But, at some point too, it would be nice for us to have a conversation about what the census data means for EJTF.
Thank you so much for all of that context. I just wanted to, mention one of the things that I hear just in my conversations with people about serving on boards and commissions is, I would love to, I just don't have the time. And especially for folks who, don't have flexibility in their jobs. It's a really big time commitment. It's not, for a lot of these boards and commissions, it's not just, the, monthly or quarterly meetings. It's meeting with constituents, and just a lot of folks don't have that flexibility. And as a result, at least some of these bodies end up, looking older, being filled with folks who are retired, who have time, who have financial security. So in some ways, there's these structural issues that I think are, they're justice issues. We're not paying people for their time beyond, travel reimbursements. So I think those are some larger conversations, to understand the barriers. And I think, what I'm seeing from the governor's office is so exciting, but I would love to hear just some of those trends that emerge as, there's more of this outreach effort, what you all are hearing from potential applicants. Because the stuff is so important and consequential.
Yeah, just in response to that, happy to get and try to get Sheehan to come to our next meeting and maybe give that report out. She definitely did give one to our office right now, like a while back when it first happened, but I just can't find the email right now. But overall, I can tell you that I don't think the office had done events like that before to just gather people up who are interested. And it was really good. I went to at least helped out on one day of those for that recruitment event. And the turnout was really, really good. I will say for natural resources, it did seem kind of like on the shorter end, but I think it was really important to just give an explanation of how many opportunities there are in state government. In a whole bunch of different capacities. Like you could have someone, be interested in EJTF, sustainability board, or like forestry, like all at the same time. And so I think it was an opportunity to show people like not only just the available seats that there are, but like how they can be flexible with their time and capacity. Like, oh, I'm not able to participate with ODFW because I can't do monthly meetings, but maybe I could meet quarterly, you know? So yeah, happy to try to set that up.
Another recruitment vein we haven't ever explored is young people that want to engage in politics. You can go on school boards and, we're seeing a huge increase in diversity and local grassroots political candidates. And this is something you can put on your resume. This is something you can use to get votes with, as if that not pay you. And many years ago, Amir and I had the same conversation. And the answer I had was pay him, something, a stipend for respect. And then in the imaginary world, we'd have a meeting and we'd figure out what everyone got made, figure out the average wage per hour, and pay that person equal to us to equal that power. But nonetheless, I think we need to invest financial resources and people that we can't have the money, well, we can help them with political empowerment with this. And sometimes that gets people interested. But I did want to raise another emerging issue, and I sent around the research last night. It's on dust. It's a huge issue in Eastern Oregon. I think it affects a lot of people, but particularly agricultural workers. They're doing research, just got funded for millions in Nevada on it. And so what's in the dust is what they're looking at are children, dust on children. And this is a very vulnerable population. This is a very politically acceptable population for the most part, for most people. And I think that it exposes a swath of vulnerability in the context of wildfire smoke. So dust and wildfire smoke isn't good for anyone. I think that as we perhaps look at some of these monies coming into our communities, one way to be honest about their vulnerability is from the combination of dust and wildfire smoke. And we don't have that on maps yet. We don't have baselines on that. We don't have this, we don't have that, but it's happening to people right now. So it's one of these things that we can have paralysis by analysis, or just move very quickly to the needs of our community in terms of putting this future need into these funding flows. So I sent that around to you. It has links for other things the grassroots community folks might be interested that's going on this coast on it. But I just want to try to use near future research as a way to put in a request for some funds for our community. So if other people have those kinds of ideas, we should share those. Thank you.
I think I'll have to step away for a minute, but any other emerging issues?
I would just offer that, OPO, Environmental Justice Oregon, is a member of the EJ Forum, and they provided a pretty good EJ analysis around the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and I'll find a way to share that with the EJ task force, because it helps breaks down actually some pretty serious like EJ concerns, and just it's really good for us to kind of be able to track what's being touted as a very huge investment in infrastructure needs, but always with those big packages, there's a lot of different concerns around how the timing of public engagement or public processes are open for EJ communities to participate and provide insight, as well as also EJ analysis. That there's actually like some parts of it that are limiting how many pages are actually being able to be submitted. So some of those things are actually pretty important EJ issues that are kind of embedded in the much larger infrastructure bill that is moving through Congress right now. I'll share it with folks, but it's a good analysis, and I think it's worth a read.
Hey, Gustavo, welcome.
Thank you, Joel.
We're just talking a little bit about some emerging EJ issues in the state. Other thoughts on this? The only other thing I have was I know that Senator Merkley recently had a hearing with the new EJ commission at the federal level. I know they invited I don't remember the first person, but I remember the second person they invited, Laura Pulido, which I know you, Bob, know pretty well, who's a scholar from California, to testify on EJ issues. And so I've been chatting a little bit with Senator Merkley's office and Senator Wyden's office. I know that they're both really interested in doing more stuff around EJ, particularly Senator Merkley's office. So as things pop up, I'll make sure to keep you on the loop. But I know that EJ is who you mentioned too, is becoming, something that's being taken a lot more serious, I think, on the federal level. So there's stuff to look out for, and there's also, I think, opportunities, hopefully future opportunities for EJTF to guide our federal government, and also just like show them that we've been trying to do this, right? Like I know there have other EJ commissions in other states, but correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, I'm pretty sure ours is the oldest. So there's something to be said there, and I think definitely our congressional delegation is aware of that. But I think there are hopefully other opportunities in this coming year for us to just at least have a conversation and provide some history and some context, so that whatever it is that they're working on, they have, they can go and say, well, here in Oregon, here's the way we've done it, and this is why it's important. I'm not sure if other folks on the call have heard of or have had other conversations with Merkley's office about some of the EJ stuff. And I'm sure, as y'all remember, he came and chatted with us briefly at our meeting. That was like a year ago now? No.
Funny you say that. I actually had a direct one-on-one with one of their staffers yesterday. Yeah, so I think it's a high priority, and it's a good opportunity for community-based organizations to have that type of access. I think their office is pretty open. There also will be moving. It's in kind of an incubation stages around some energy justice related federal work. pretty interesting stuff. I'm looking into it more, and being able to have EJ communities kind of at the forefront of some of those conversations, I think is a good orientation for that office. And I felt pretty good about the meeting we had with them just yesterday.
That's great to hear, Hui. I know I kept trying to get in touch with their office, kept bouncing back and forth. So I'm glad you got a chance to connect with them. Senator Merkley for a long time has been a big champion for a number of issues. During, I think, the last federal administration, he was very much an advocate for immigrants in the country. And actually went down to, I think he actually went down to some of the detention centers where they were keeping children, and I know his organization is also pretty in close contact with groups like Bakun. So who knows? This is year one of a new federal administration. So hopefully, with the conversations you're having, Hui, and then other advocates and potential folks on this call, we can try and influence something that's going to reach the whole country.
Amira, I just shared those fact sheets and then the letter to congressional leadership and the Biden administration. I don't know exactly the best way to share it with the EJ task force, but if you get a chance to forward it, that'd be great.
Yes, I'll put in the chat now for folks to look at if they just want to open it, and then I can send it later via email as a follow-up in the notes. Thank you.
I didn't even
It's
know
really
you could do
interesting.
that.
No worries. It's hard to keep track of what the federal government is doing on EJ. So thank you for sharing. It's great.
In addition to that White House statement, I also sent the EJ Leadership Forum's analysis around budget reconciliation and the bipartisan infrastructure investment bill. I think it was called the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I think those EJ analysis were pretty spot on. And if you think it's hard from the governor's office to track federal work, think about a community-based organization trying to do the same thing.
Other folks have any emerging issues of the things they want to bring up? The other thing I was thinking about, and I know that some community advocates, mostly the CBOs and Portland Metro, sent a letter along with Multnomah County Commissioner to PGE and some other of the utilities up in Portland during the most recent heat wave. Sent a letter asking for them not to do shutoffs. Sounded like Ezel was pretty clear that that's something that they need to continue to hear. So I was curious if task force members thought it would potentially be appropriate to draft a letter ourselves to the governor and ask her to do the same. What do y'all think?
I do think so. And if they're displacing low-income people because they can't pay their hot power bill during a heat wave, that's a clear and present danger to people's public health, to everyone who's vulnerable, to the elderly, especially. They may not die directly from a heat wave, but stroke, heart attack, loss of appetite causing a fall. So he didn't get into all the impacts of a power cutoff and a heat wave. That is something that affects every EJ person and community, that power cutoff. So I feel strongly we should. I'd be happy to help.
Thanks, Bob. What other folks think? Is anyone like, nah, we shouldn't do that? Okay, I don't think so. Good. That's good.
Well, I'll just mention I'm supportive, and one of the things I'll do as a follow-up if we kind of move this forward is share it with the Oregon Advocacy Commission office, because that would be another space for mobilization across the multiple commissions.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think if folks are cool with it, it would be nice to have, multiple sign-ons from the other advocacy commissions. And then just have a letter that's not just about shut-offs, but also really trying to bring to light like this last year of both heat waves, historical wildfires, and then of course the power outages that happened last winter, that wasn't PGE's or any other utility company's decision. That was the Earth's decision to shut people's power off. But it's important to bring up, especially as the Delta variant continues to rip through our communities. It's going to be, folks are going to be staying inside even more as we approach fall and winter. So no, that's great. I appreciate that, Ben. So maybe Bob and I, we'll work on a draft, and then we'll shop it around to y'all. And then, Ben, I know you've got a meeting here pretty soon with the Commission on Black Affairs, and maybe we can chat with Albert, Amira, and the other chairs and see if they want to sign on. Okay. Any other issues folks want to bring up? Sweet. Speaking of heat, it's great to see Michael Wood, as you mentioned, Valentine, have him come and talk to us about those emergency rules. But I do want to be very clear that those emergency heat and heat stress standards and wildfire smoke standards, I think, came into place because a farm worker passed away. And I just wanted to bring that up and remind folks, I don't think we've met since then, but an Oregon farm worker did pass away this summer from that very first sort of heat wave where it was 108 degrees. I know they died at a nursery here in the Willamette Valley. For those of us that live in the Willamette Valley, and it was, I don't know, that's frustrating because we've had conversations about farm workers for many, many years. Right. I used to actually come here and yell at y'all for it. Right. Over half a decade ago now. And it's just really frustrating that it sort of took for something like that to happen, for these things to be put into place. And I think the trend that I'm seeing here that's happening over and over again that's really frustrating is that we're doing things a lot in response to events and not, trying to catch them beforehand. And, this has been an issue that we've been talking about for a long, long time. I think the difference is that now that these catastrophic climate events and heat waves that, we've experienced in the past to a minute level are now like really jumping up. So yeah, I'm excited Michael Wood came, but I want to make it clear that those things passed in large part because of tremendous pressure from community advocates, including PCUN and other labor groups across the state and unions. Right, they put tremendous pressure on Oregon OSHA and to try and pass these emergency rules. But I also wanted to bring attention that, in addition to farm workers, there are a lot of other industries in Oregon that have people who work outside that are these very same communities, whether it be the canneries out in, in places like Coos Bay, in Lincoln City, right, in Astoria, to the Salal fields, right, that people ship off to Europe to make Christmas ornaments. And then, of course, the actual Christmas trees, a couple workers died last winter in a car crash trying to rush delivery Christmas trees. Construction workers, right? So there are a lot of other mushroom pickers, a lot of other industries in Oregon that have vulnerable community members and many times immigrant workers working outside in really deplorable conditions. So there's a lot. This is a great victory, and I'm really glad that this is a temporary rule. But the fact of the matter remains, a lot of these workers are continue to be underpaid. Don't receive overtime, and face a lot of deaths. And then, of course, our forestry workers, which the task force, also knows about and worked on for quite some time. So there's still a lot to do to protect vulnerable Oregon workers, and these heat waves aren't going anywhere. They're just going to keep going up. So something we need to continue to pay attention to and push for.
I think you're Cherry Boy. If I may add, I was talking to a farm worker a couple of days, and it's funny because I think we talk about it as a heat wave, but the way he described it to me, during summer, they're always working under heat. For us, it's a heat wave because we're accustomed in being in a house with AC, and we walk out in the car to go and do some errands, right? We see the difference. But the fact is that farm workers have been working under excessive heat for a really long time. And it's an issue that the Oregon Law Center has raised, several years ago. And what it triggered a directive from Oregon OSHA, which doesn't have the enforcement mechanism. But I believe that had we had those, rules during that time, we may have prevented many, heat-related illnesses and even deaths. And it's been frustrating because I've seen a pattern here, similar with COVID-19, with testing of vaccines. Farm workers are always on the back. Let's not do anything right now. Let's not do anything. And then once we try to do something, sometimes it is very late. And so as someone who has done farm work in the past, it is really frustrating. And I hope that we can learn from these lessons and try to be proactive as a state and protect our farm workers. We recognize how critical they are in our work, food supply, and we got to show that when it comes to protecting them and taking actions. The other thing I wanted to just mention is that I just learned that EPA is in the process of phasing out chlorpyrifos. They'll be studying root making, and I know that Oregon passed regulations at the end of last year. And I think that that's good, given that we have farm workers who are working in pesticide treated areas, and many workers who live in labor housing and are not protected from pesticide drift, given that their labor camps are surrounded by orchards that is treated with pesticides. And in many instances, people don't know what type of pesticide is being applied. So that's some good news. I do believe that we have a lot of pesticide-related illnesses that go unreported. We don't have a mechanism in place to track all those illnesses, and it's something that we need to address so that we know how pesticide, and this is something I mentioned yesterday, right? How pesticide, heat stress, and wildfire smokes are hurting our farm worker communities throughout the state.
I wanted to say yesterday, I was very pleased that they finally got air cleaners, air filters to this population. It's so important, but it underscores something that we haven't really discussed and Joel touched on. These temporary rules are nice, but with these air filters, you're going to need to keep giving continued support. It has to be not temporary, but continuous. So with these air filters, you get an air filter, the better filter you have, the more expensive it is, and the faster it gets used up. So then you got to spend $25 to get a replacement filter. So, while the infrastructure and it's a temporary measure and this helped out, and you all got air cleaners, but not to have it structurally included as a way, not to lose that, and we will give you all the air filters you need, on that. So I think that the point about this is wonderful. I was glad to see he made these temporary rules. That's very difficult to do, and a lot of people wouldn't have done that, but he did in his organization. But for structural changes, some of the great things we heard yesterday, wonderful work going out there, finally getting an air cleaner to this really polluted air exposed community. It should have been done 20 years ago, and it should not stop. It should start. It should become institutionalized, and all the mechanisms of air filters or whatever equivalent it is that's being brought in needs a continuous included structure in the operation of government, not just temporary. So I used the example of air filters, and I shared that with the presenter yesterday on that because people don't think of that, and a dirty air filter can be worse than no air filter in terms of a vector for new COVID, and you have infants in the house. So while there's great advancement and there's a flush of happiness we have for that, Joel's point about making it last structurally, this is the time we put in those requests. We make people aware that this is not temporary. So I just wanted to share that one example and on that and underscore the point that it's great, but we need to make it real for now and forever. So thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Good folks. Okay. I think with that, then we have some opening for public comment. Is anyone from the attendees list who would like to provide public comment? Okay, I don't think there's anyone here. In that case,
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry, Chair. I'm not seeing any hands raised from attendees or comments in the chat from public members.
Sweet.
I mean, there are some, but I don't see anyone's hands raised
Right.
to
Okay.
speak up.
Well, sweet. In that case, I think we may be done out of here by 11, folks. So why don't we take a quick 10-minute break, and then we'll finish off the rest of our agenda. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. We got a few things left to cover. We should be out of here by 11. So I have on here EJTF business, strategic plan and work plan updates. I think we did something like this at our last meeting where we kind of went through that sheet and checked off things we did or haven't done. But at this point, I think this is the 2-year mark of our strategic plan. And what was not included in our strategic plan was a global pandemic. So it kind of feels like maybe we should try and do something like that again. I know last time we did it, we were able to get together in person, and sort of have a little sort of 1-day retreat before our actual meeting and just have a conversation about, our 2-year strategic plan. But at this point, depending on how the short session goes, if SB 286 is able to come back and potentially make it through, it would be advantageous, I think, to try and go through another strategic plan like that again.
I wholeheartedly agree, Joel. And the things have changed so much, not only COVID, but this huge amount of EJ legislation that actually got passed. As an activist, all of us here know how hard it is to just get one thing through. Sometimes there's years nothing gets through. And so it was hats off to you upfront people dealing with it all. Thank you very much. And it's something that we did not have in our strategic plan either, that there would be a flush of EJ legislation. I think because of Zoom and allowing greater community participation, several pieces of legislation, pretty direct legislation, came out from grassroots community groups. Joel and I sat on one early on and really got farther than any place else in terms of changing goal 1 of the Department of Land Conservation Development. So we didn't plan for any of that in our strategic plan. We were being included in legislation without us being told. And so we're just catching up this year. So a sort of redirection, refocus, underscoring the necessity of doing these things even more, just as a human, as part of our responsibility to ourselves representing environmental justice issues. I think a 1-day type of training would be really in order, maybe even 2 days, depending on other things. But yes, I don't, as a lawyer, we don't have a lot of these kinds of meetings like that. We have very efficient, quick meetings. And and I've usually not wanted to do these HR things, but I think now the time is ripe for us we need it. And those that come after us will have to have us have had it. So that's all.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mira, about bylaws. I don't think we have formal bylaws, do we? No, that's what I thought. I don't think we have any formal bylaws. But that might be a good thing to do as well. But again, right, I think as we've talked up until this point, it's just been EJTF members and then a revolving door of support, from the governor's office. I think we had Gabriella Goldfarb, and then I don't even know if it was anyone before that, but after that was Jason, and then Amir. I think you've been, at least in my time at EJTF, the most consistent person. But yeah, right now it feels like we're in a sort of holding pattern, because on the one hand there are sort of things that we need to accomplish and do, and at the same time, there's a very real possibility that this EJTF bill will pass in the short session. But any other thoughts on the strategic plan before Amira shows it to us again? Okay. I'm gonna go through the mirror. See.
Okay, can folks see this okay? Maybe I can.
Yeah.
It's so it's a little bit bigger. Sorry. Yeah, and I think the last time we looked at this was in June. So it's been, you know, as well as you were saying, you know, it's been this kind of weird holding pattern because I think after session, or I don't remember if we met during session or we met like right after, but I think we were still coming to terms with like the bill not making it through. And so we kind of went through each line of strategy related to our goal strategic plans and then building out details. And then you can see like the progress that's being made. Some things are still kind of like left off the table for now. And then a couple of things are ongoing and some are completed. And another thing that's kind of holding us back from completing this too is we still don't have like all our seats filled with vacancies. So that's something else to consider.
One thing that's not there, and I've reviewed this and had this thought about it, but now that things are where they are, I'm going to mention that we might want to make better use of our citizen advocates. And I think our citizen advocates should have a training too. And some of the citizen advocates have been terrific, and they go beyond just the reports and so forth, and they give us notice of important issues like CAFOs and things like that. Really go beyond the kind, and there's no real position description aspect of that. And because they're not being written into position descriptions, like in water, for instance, I think we lose a little bit of institutional traction that is in the statute, you know, for EJTF. And I don't think we've tapped that resource as much as we would want to, out of respect for the fact that they are almost volunteer doing this because they don't get that much agency support that they should get. But, you know, we look around the room and looking for capacity, that's the sort of area we haven't really used enough, and maybe we could squeeze some capacity out of that. Just a thought.
That is a really good point. Any questions about this first goal? And then I can move on to the next one. And I will say too, the goal number 1 is also being kind of hurt by the pandemic as well. It's kind of hard to build off of new connections when we're not as close in community as we normally would be. Okay. Okay, so for goal number 2, this was very much focused around the bill with Senate Bill 286. But now looking at this again, you know, one thing that's missing is developing a campaign plan. And so after a really brief conversation I've had with a few community partners and you all, you know, maybe that's something that could be focused on for this legislative session coming up. If that makes sense.
Yeah, all right. You and I just chatted recently, right, about this, that we need to convene sort of EJTF members have capacity, and then of course, these stakeholders, touch the stakeholders again and have a conversation. Mary and I spoke a week or two ago, and I think we mentioned it yesterday too, that just folks' capacities were pretty low during last session, but folks might be interested in pushing for this EJTF bill at the short session, given that it's short and there's not as many priorities.
And then with this aspect around like a better campaign around getting those changes, with the landscape changing, and we could have benefited from more coalition building. And there actually has been some changes in terms of our potential partner organizations. There are more positions to actually help with either climate justice or environmental justice or environmental health that I've seen grow over the past few months. So I think there could be potential to have partner CBOs engage with the EJTF more, because now they have more capacity. And of course, it's not assuming that they can do it. Like, everyone has their own projects and priorities that they're working on and focused on. But I think it's an opportunity to form better connections with partners like PCOON and NAACP across the state, like CCC and potentially others. It feels like EJ and climate justice has definitely become more of a priority over the past year or so. Any questions about this?
No, I think it'd just be good, Amira, to remind us again of like a timeline. 'Cause I know, like, we're still in August technically, but then once September hits, it's like the timeline from like September to basically Thanksgiving is very short, right? Because I know we've got technically the whole month of December, but it's impossible to do sort of this type of collaborative work in December. And then of course with Thanksgiving, two people travel a lot. And then not to mention, I know there are other timelines the legislature has, that are probably before then. So it would be good to get sort of like some really firm dates. And it's like, okay, we have to have a conversation by this date. There needs to be something put into the legislature, a bill proposed forward by this other date. This fall happens pretty quickly.
Yes.
Just a point on the campaign plan, you have gain buy-in. I think we need to really refine that. It's been my experience that when there's money on the table and people have written letters of support, but it's you or them, it's not you. If you're not there, if you're not, at the table, you're on the menu. And so the type of buy-in, perhaps it's just, callousness in this, but we want it specific, we want it deep, we want it long, we want it sincere, and we want it to pull in votes. That's what we want. And so that the politicos among us know that and how to do that. But you're not always in the room. EJ is not in the room until very recently, as much as we think we are. When big money decisions are there, we will be with the emergency board this time around for the first time. So in the campaign plan, and I know Quinn is an expert on these things, and so as well, in terms of what kind of buy-in and how we can plug in as non-politicos to help you with that. We would benefit from, using our EJTF hive brain on that. if we do a training. So.
Okay, any other comments about this goal? Okay. Okay, so goal 3 was more about how the EJTF is giving out information. And this is still ongoing. And I think there's some real progress being made here around like coordinating information out there. Our Zoom meetings for the rest of the year. Again, I feel like there's been good participation there. And then building off of that educational piece, I think is definitely happening. Any comments or additions to this or things that should be considered?
One thing that refines some of these questions is what concepts of vulnerability are. If we expanded vulnerability to over 65 with COPD and put the dust and wildfire smoke in, that would be a different dimension of vulnerability that's real and affects a lot of people. So that I don't know how that would affect some of the later goals in terms of that, but the follow-up, things like that, that could change the landscape of these questions, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. And I don't know what else could either. COVID, unforeseen circumstances have to be planned in a little bit. It should be a little line at the bottom, and whatever we forgot or whatever we didn't know at the time. But that way we're open to it when we're ready. When I say get ready, we're ready when something happens, more ready than that. So I just wanted to indicate that the windows of vulnerability are rapidly increasing with viruses and heat waves and floods in many places and environmental refugees here. So that we should leave about a 20% space for things we can't foresee in the near future on this, instead of the normal 10% of just wiggle room. I think we need a larger margin of unknown events occurring, especially the interaction of all these factors with the cumulative effects rapidly increasing because of these events on our community. So I'm saying we should just leave a little room to be ready for something a little more serious.
On the language accessibility, I think we've seen some progress by some natural resource agencies. Yesterday I talked about ODA conducting a rulemaking public hearing with interpretation, translating documents in Spanish. You also know that ODF has their interpretation vendor all set up. And I want to continue to push it. I think we need to put our EJ website in Spanish. I know it's something that we have talked about, and but we need to do that if we want to set the example of what natural resource agencies need to be doing. I think we should put that as a priority. And I don't know what would need to happen to make it happen.
Yeah, the only thing I think we have an opportunity to do, because we have kind of done it somehow, right? Like the one-on-ones with legislators, those of us who spend time at the Capitol, like, or have been advocates for quite some time, already have existing relationships with legislators. And some folks have met with them throughout the pandemic. Of course, it's a lot easier now that we don't have to trek, to the Capitol. I'm unsure is the Capitol still open, Amira? I know they reopened recently with with folks having to wear masks, but with the mask mandate, is it still open?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure because I think they're doing construction as well right now.
Okay. And I also know it's not like we're not in a session right now, so folks typically don't meet with legislators in the Capitol, even if COVID wasn't here. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I think there's opportunities for, especially with this EJTF bill, for us to do some strategic one-on-ones as EJTF members, but also as representatives of our organizations or factions in the coming months. So, whatever support you can lend to that, Amira, would be really helpful in terms of really laying out who's strategic to meet with, and then us as an EJTF, and as time and capacity allows for us to begin having those one-on-ones, as early as September, and trying to do it through November, I think would be a good goal. Because it's not, it's the biggest constraint is just finding the time, but these one-on-ones typically don't take, an hour. Typically an off session might be 15 to 30 minutes,
Great. Okay. Anything else with this goal? Right. And then the last one, I think, yeah. Goal 4 was around creating accountability and improving our processes. I'm sorry not to see Jim here today, but there has been a lot of movement on this with Courtney's help. Yeah, I think we're in a good place on this. So starting actually September 8th or so, we'll have a new administrative assistant for natural resources who's going to join us, Hallie Parker. And she'll be stepping into a new role with us. And, during our next meeting, she'll definitely get an intro. But Courtney is going to be focusing on health and human services. So she probably won't be able to help with this anymore. But a lot of these items have already kind of been built up and coordinated. We just need to reveal that to you all. And we've had a few conversations over the past year about different materials and processes that are going to be built in. Okay, any questions about this? Okay, and that's kind of all I have. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Okay, I really appreciate the feedback and input. I know everyone is super busy. I want to figure out how to make sure we're tracking this in real time so it's not just during the quarterly meetings. I wonder what would be the best way to do that. And well, I really like your suggestion of having specific dates associated with like what's our deadline and timeline with this work.
Yeah, it'd be great just to have a backwards plan, Amira, even if it's just a quick one pager that you can send out to us. That way and then some potential calendar, just like calendar invites, so that it's like in our calendars, so we know like, okay, this thing is coming up, and it'll hopefully cue us to check in with you or with each other about this issue. I think oftentimes we just get really busy.
Mhm.
The other thing too is like, I know we don't have our next meeting until December. Yeah, that's our next meeting is December technically.
Is it December or November?
I think we usually have it in early December, late November. Traditionally, we've had it like the first week of December. We've had the meeting.
Okay, sorry. I've kind of been like living day to day since the pandemic. Okay, so the next meeting is November 16th and 17th.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's a lot sooner than anticipated. I think before
Yeah.
we'd have a meeting
Before Thanksgiving.
right. We'd have a meeting in like September, then we'd have one in December. So that makes sense because we're having it slightly early. So we'll have it the week before. So yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have like a little 1 hour check-in or half an hour check-in in between those, so that we can get updates and then potentially just discuss, just have a little nice midstream point, so that we don't get to November 16th being like, what happened? So whatever dates between now and November 17th, that's when we should meet for a quick hour check-in. But I'm sure we can do scheduling stuff with your office, Amir. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, there's about 12 weeks between today and the November meeting. So probably in like the halfway point would be in 6 weeks.
Okay.
So if we're going to be strict about it, it would probably be October 6th, but sort of around early October.
Around that day, yeah. Early
Okay.
October, early to mid-October would be great to check in, see how we're doing.
Okay, I will have Courtney try to set that up before she transitions, or at least get that started.
Okay.
And put out maybe like a doodle poll for that first week of October, and we can nail down a date.
That'd be great.
Cool.
Let's do quick, just like closing comments and reflections from folks, and then let's get out of here, y'all. Who wants to go first?
I can go first and just offer just some short comments. I really did appreciate the engagement of the agencies yesterday and the reports and all the members here, the thoughtfulness and how difficult this has been for our communities for the past, almost 2 years, it feels like, on a wide range of issues. And I'm grateful to be part of this group. And I think there's lots of opportunities for our leadership in multiple spaces, both locally and federally now. And yeah, just trying to make those links. And I'm excited to, offer more time and engagement to the task force as we explore those opportunities. Thank you, y'all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, I thought yesterday, was great. Hearing, all of the natural resource agencies reporting on their work, and I think that we should think whether, day 2 of our meeting, we could have, some CBOs attending and presenting on EJ issues that they're working with their communities. I think, there's some opportunities where we can connect natural resource agencies with CBOs. And I feel like I missed the listening session part of our meetings. And, if we can think whether this is doable in our next quarterly meeting, to think about 1 or 2 CBO that we can invite to present on their work.
I can go to, I really like that idea of reaching out to CBOs. Valentin, thank you. I fully support that. Would be excited to hear from some of those groups. I just want to say thank you as well to Amira and to all of the agencies. I have to say, leaving this, I think I'm most excited about putting together, a campaign for the next legislative session and getting the EJTF bill over the finish line. I think that has got me feeling the most energy. So thank you.
Thanks, Quinn.
Thanks for everyone. This is a big steps forward. We have that momentum. It's getting bigger nationally. It feeds us, we feed that. So there's a synergy of these forces that are occurring. The millennial, and I use that broadly as a generation, is aware of public health issues, 300% increase in public health applications for graduate schools from that group. So cumulative impacts north of us, cumulative impacts south of us. Bioregions don't go by state lines. So I think that we will come to there, and I share Quinn's enthusiasm that we will really move forward quicker than we even know on some of these issues, because of the technological ability to know the exact environmental impacts of our activities on land, air, and water. And that can only help us. So wonderful session, and I really appreciate everyone here personally for sharing their time. Thank you.
This is Gustavo. I really appreciate getting caught up. I know that it's been a little bit given personal circumstances in my participation with EJTF. However, organizationally and in the work that we do, we've been involved in a number of efforts to help support environmental issues. But that being said, it's really great to reconnect with folks, get back into the game, and I look forward to how I can continue to support and contribute in meaningful ways towards the work that's being done.
Yeah, thanks y'all for continuing to show up. It's half the battle, showing up, and I know that you all have a lot going on, both in your work at organizations or as part of a government agency. So, we are trudging through. So I just wanted to continue to remind y'all to be gentle with yourselves, right? We're not working from home. We're working in the middle of a global pandemic and making the best of it. So appreciate everyone's patience and everyone's hard work. So thanks, y'all. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
All right,
Have
y'all.
a great week.